Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's community virtual gathering brought to you by the Transgender Law Center. My name is Sophia Kass. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the coordinator for the Positively Trans program at the Transgender Law Center. As a quick update, after today's virtual gathering, we are taking a break and we will come back with virtual gatherings in the month of June or Pride Month. I will repeat this piece of information at the end for people who join later. I would like to start this week's community gathering by just reiterating that at the Transgender Law Center, we commit to disability justice as a central value and politic for trans liberation. Disability justice holds access as a necessary practice for disrupting isolation and ensuring the participation and the leadership of disabled folks. Access is meaningful when it includes a commitment to the radical, deeply transformative demands of disability justice. Disability justice charges us to identify, to interrupt and disrupt all forms of supremacy, including ableism, anti-Black racism, misogyny, fat phobia, classism, and more. So by committing to build accessible spaces, we are implementing a commitment to have critical conversations together around disability justice. Now back to Positively Trans. A brief introduction. We are a national network of trans and gender nonconforming people of color living with HIV. Our network is led by a steering committee of around 20 national trans leaders of color living with HIV. And we also have a membership of about 140 members. Our members are mainly Black and brown trans people living with HIV. And the Positively Trans program's goal, our goal, is to mobilize and promote, support the resilience and the leadership of trans people of color most impacted by or living with HIV and AIDS. And the way we do that is by using what I like to call our three main superpowers, or three kicks, which is data and research to fill the data gap and the lack of data that represents trans people of color living with HIV, telling our stories, also to reclaim the power of reclaiming our own narrative. And finally, our third kick is through leadership development and capacity building. If you are interested to take a look at the needs assessment published by Positively Trans in 2016 and then in 2018, please check, I think it's going to be in the caption, the link to where you can find the report, and also the YouTube channel link to where you can find all of our videos. I should mention that our videos are no longer than 3 minutes. And so it's going to be really enjoyable and easy for people to watch through. Next, I would like you to help me welcome and introduce three steering committee members of the Positively Trans Project: Achim Howard from Washington, DC, Diana Oliva from California, and Tori Cooper from Washington, DC, originally from Georgia, calling in from Washington, DC. Diana, we can start the first question with you, if you don't mind. Can you tell us more about yourself? And particularly when you're answering, Diana, would you please tell us how HIV has impacted your life? And looking at today, how do you see the challenges of COVID-19 as compared to the challenges of HIV?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diana Oliva, and thank you again to Sophie and the Transgender Law Center and Positively Trans for inviting me to this community gathering. I'm deeply humbled and grateful to be a part of this gathering, and hello to everyone across the country. I was diagnosed with HIV back in January of 2000, so actually 20 years ago. And I remember the day I was living in my hometown, Fresno, California, when I received the painstakingly news that I was HIV positive. And I thought immediately that my life was over. I actually physically thought I was going to die in a few weeks or in a few months. It brought me to a mental state of denial. And I didn't address my HIV status until probably 18 months later, when a sister of mine passed away, and her death really awakened a spirit in me to live my life, to fight for my life, to live my life if it was my destiny to live for many, many years. And so I left Fresno and moved to Los Angeles to engage and maintain my treatment and addressing my HIV. And so my life has changed in the past 20 years. I've been able to achieve and fulfill many of my dreams. One of my dreams was to go back to college and receive a master's degree. And I received that 15 years ago at Columbia University, and being one of the first trans people to enter the School of Social Work and receive a master's degree from Columbia University. And recently, about 5 months ago, purchased a home for the very first time. And so if it wasn't for HIV, I don't think it would have propelled me to begin a second chapter in my life and to fulfill my destiny and to really make an impact in our communities. And so what I see today, what's happening, I think the fear and the anxiety and the stress and the sadness and the depression happening all over again for many people living with HIV or at risk for HIV. And I think the lessons we learned through the AIDS epidemic that we can apply here for the COVID pandemic. And so staying connected, having these virtual community gatherings, talking to one another, sharing best practices would be beneficial to all our communities living with or affected by HIV. Thank you again, Sophie, for the question.
Thank you, Diana. My next question can go to Achim. So Achim, can you tell us what challenges did COVID-19 create for our community? For example, what needs or gaps are you seeing being amplified as a result of COVID-19 and as a result of the disparities?
The challenges, hi, my name is Achim. The challenges that I see with COVID-19 for my community is that a lot of jobs were lost. I know for me, I went into furlough, so I had to create something to get income, like selling my artwork or selling Avon or just doing something that would create some type of income coming in. What needs or gaps do need to be amplified? I think during this time frame, it has really taught me to really look into myself as an individual and try to figure out what exactly do I want to do and how can I help the community at the same time. I noticed that a lot of us are helping one another by giving. There's a group that we're making masks for the community. Just what I see is a lot of people becoming unified. If somebody needs some help, they're trying to find ways of helping and giving. Element of Hope, AQK, Trans March, just a different community entities that have been giving out funds. Alpha Omega Kappa Fraternity Incorporated, that's AQK. Positively Trans has also had some funds that they were giving out. So it's Trans Law. That is just different entities that are coming together. And I noticed that what my thing is, I've noticed that a lot of people have been scared because they don't know what exactly is COVID-19. and it is affecting us the same way as it has when AIDS was um, first came into existence. You know, people didn't know exactly what to do. And this is the first time that I have ever seen the government or anything shut down, like all throughout the country, just for something. And it at first it just HIV or AIDS was just affecting one set of community, but COVID-19 is hitting everybody at a rampant, and it's like it's not just hitting people with HIV, it's hitting the elderly, it doesn't have a name to it. And it's like everybody is really scared because they don't know what to expect or when it's going to end. So now everybody is cautious. And like I said, I've seen a lot of unity within the community. Speaking and when I say community, I'm not just talking about the LGBTQ community. I'm just talking about the community in general. I see people pitching in, giving out food and just helping the homeless. It has really impacted people through the heart. And I think that's the only way that we are going to come through this.
Thank you, Achim. My next question goes to Tori. Tori, from what you're observing, how is our community responding to the challenges that Achim just talked about? If you can mention initiatives, for example, that you've seen happen, and also how can people watching, for example, support or contribute or chime in?
All right. So I'd love to thank Sophie and TLC and for everyone who had a part in bringing me here today to be a part of such an amazing group of folks. In response to what Achim said and what Sophie said, there are some amazing, I'll first say that the transgender and non-binary communities have shown throughout many, many years that if nothing else, we are resilient. If for those who have been diagnosed with HIV, that virus didn't kill you because you're here tonight. And COVID doesn't have to kill you. I am so immensely impressed at all of the innovations that I'm seeing across the country. I am seeing that folks, some of the things that Achim mentioned, I love to see that we, as always, have created solutions that are going to help to save our lives and contribute to our lives. There are resource funds that have popped up all over the place. There are some of the larger pharmaceutical companies, for instance, have given. The Elton John AIDS Foundation was another that contributed to. They put $1 million back in the community to help a community of people who are living with HIV, to create a rapid resource fund. And then organizations across the country, trans-led, trans-run, and trans-serving organizations, then created smaller rapid resource funds. That is resilience. I have seen, as Achim said, where we are, folks are creating masks. Masks are one of the few tools that we have to keep us safe, other than, of course, quarantining. And so it is wonderful to see folks, everyday trans folks, everyday non-binary folks who are pitching in. It is wonderful to see how we are all, we're making sure that folks have a meal and a place to stay. That's what resilience looks like in trans communities. And I'm just so proud of all of us. And I know this is going to continue because, again, if HIV didn't kill you, then COVID doesn't have to.
Thank you, Tori. Diana, my next question is for you. How can people today, in the midst of all the fear, learn from the accumulated wisdom of trans and gender nonconforming people of color living with HIV since the early days of the HIV AIDS epidemic?
I really want to kind of echo what my sister, Tori Cooper, and happy birthday, Tori Cooper, by the way. You're looking fabulous at 50. But the power of resiliency and perseverance, I think that's one of the lessons learned through the AIDS epidemic, that many trans people were diagnosed and are still living today. And the fortitude and the innovation of our thinking, I think we've become as a community more strategic and more tactical, where if things are not built for us, and then we have the strength and the fortitude and the intelligence and the talent to go ahead and create our own organizations, our own initiatives, our own movements. And I think we're seeing that, especially through the COVID. Many of our trans communities, unfortunately, are struggling and are struggling in silos. People are drawn to being connected. And unfortunately, because of shelter in place and quarantine orders, we are unable to. But I mean, we are so resilient and so innovative, where we can create these virtual community gatherings and community town halls. And, just a few weeks ago, created my own Zoom party. I never had, or even would imagine at 48 years old, that I would actually celebrate my birthday virtually and come across 50 plus people across the country and across the globe that came on Zoom to wish me a happy birthday. And so I think, what we're seeing in our community is the resiliency and the fortitude of our communities. And that's what's going to go ahead and propel us into successfully overcoming this COVID. I know that many people are scared, many people are anxious. Sometimes we don't want to get out of the bed. We don't want to even do the simple daily routines, taking a shower, combing our hair, brushing our teeth. But it's super, super important that we stay connected. Sometimes that cell phone that we have weighs 1,000 pounds because we're afraid to ask for help. But I think during this time, I think our community has really demonstrated not only our resiliency and our innovative, but just our willingness to help one another. We've had so many funding resources that Tori explained that are really uplifting and empowering our communities. Is it enough? No. Will it ever be enough? Probably not. But you know what? I think, many people are creating GoFundMe accounts. I created one personally for some of folks that I know across the country to help them with groceries. And I think this is the opportunity during not only the AIDS epidemic that we learned from, but during this COVID, what we learned in the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and the 90s, that we can really apply to COVID. The government sometimes are not going to be saving us. They're not going to be there to economically or mentally empower us. It's up to us as community, as grassroots organizers, as activists, as leaders, to make our own movements and create our own initiatives to making sure that we don't leave anyone behind.
Thank you for that, Diana. So my last question actually goes to my three panelists, and we can start with you, Achim. Achim, what gives you hope or inspires you to persevere and keep on living in this difficult moment?
What gives me hope is my higher power, spiritually, and also everybody in the community pitching in, and to have someone that is encouraging every day. That's what gives me hope, because I know that trouble is not going to last always. My favorite motto is, it's going to rain sometimes, but the sun is always going to come out. So that's what I live by. Even though it's a struggle, we're going to make it through it, and the only way we're going to do it is working together, coming together as a community, being selfless and helping one another, and not being greedy or demeaning to anybody. If somebody needs help, give them the help that they need. And one thing that I struggle with is asking for help, because I'm always helping other people, and it's not of me to help, but I have gained the courage to ask for help during this time. And even though that was a struggle for me, I have connected with quite a night, just a good community that's just been helping. I can't say anything else, but it's just the community who really have lifted me up. The phone calls, reaching out to other people as well, has helped me as well. Um, and it's not just me going through it, it's everybody that's is going through it. So that's another thing that's giving me hope too, because we're all struggling with the same thing. It's not like one person is just going through it, it's everybody that's going through it. And so everybody is connecting, everybody is talking about how we going to make it through, what we need to do to make it through, and what are the next steps in order to for something like this, if in the future happens, what can we do to so that we'll be prepared for the next go around. And it just gives me hope that everybody is putting their heads together, their minds together, as well as their hearts.
So one of the great things, and I will be as succinct as I can, I'm not known exactly for brevity and shortness, but I will keep it quick. Diana was right. Today is my 50th birthday. And one of the things that gives me hope is that there's going to be a time when many of us don't have the same jobs, when we won't have the same jobs, when our job titles will not have to include HIV, and our job titles will not have to include trans, because all people, regardless as to what your HIV diagnosis is or what your gender identity is, will be treated equally and or equitably. I believe we have to remember right now, COVID is taking over the news, but HIV, the HIV epidemic is not over. There are folks that are still dying from HIV disease and who aren't getting everything that they need. There are folks who are still having difficulty attaining housing. And I am terribly afraid that some of the money that's being redirected to COVID is going to end up coming from the EHE or the ETE. It's going to come from the Ryan White program. We're now $5 trillion in debt, or we will be pretty soon. And so it's important to understand that money has to come from somewhere. I get hope in the fact that in spite of all of the challenges that trans, non-binary folks face, in spite of all the challenges that people of color, and particularly Black and Brown people face, I am inspired and I have hope that we have made it this far, and we will continue to figure out ways to take care of ourselves and to heal ourselves and to move forward.
Thank you, Tori. Diana, all yours.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be on a panel with amazing folks like Tori and Achim. So I just appreciate the resiliency that you both carry. What inspires me, or what gives me hope? The simple answer is God, my family, my close friends, and my community. But I grew up in a very rural town in the center of California. We were farm workers in the summertime. So we grew up very, very poor. We were on public assistance, on Medicaid, and on food stamps. And I would go hungry to school at times, and I would have stomach aches. And I learned very early on that there were so many injustices in the world. And, sometimes I wish, when will I ever stop fighting? And I remember the first time, one of my first memories of stigma. And this was way before my HIV diagnosis and my experiences with HIV stigma, but I was about 6 years old. I was in kindergarten. It was the last week of school. And we were playing these activities and recreational games, and we would win prizes or ribbons or medals. I can't remember. And it was a hula hoop contest. And I grew up in the projects in this rural town. And I had a best friend named Pom Pom and Yaya, and we were the hula hoop queens in the project. And so when we heard that during school time, there was going to be a hula hoop contest, us three got together and we're like, okay, one of us is going to win. Right. And they timed us. They said, ready, set, go. And all the boys' hula hoops immediately dropped. Right. And then the girls, little by little, 30 seconds after 30 seconds, their hula hoops. And it was just yeah, pom-pom in my South. And then Ya's hula hoop dropped, and then pom-pom's hula hoop dropped. And I was the only one. And I was this feminine little boy hula hooping for my life. But it was the first time I actually saw the teachers, the adults on the playground looking at me with disgust or with this look of shame. And it was my first time as a 6-year-old experiencing shame and stigma. And I will never forget that feeling. And I grew up in my life helping my mom in the fields, picking grapes, marching with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta when we were kids for farm worker rights. And that was my first experience fighting for human rights. And then growing up, watching movies on Martin Luther King, and I remember crying. And I just recently watched a series on PBS about Asian Americans, Pacific Islander immigrants, because we're celebrating the month of May, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And it brought tears to me again. And it reminds me of the work that still needs to be done, not only in HIV, but now the criminalization of COVID and surveillance and the policing of folks during this pandemic. And there's so much injustices in the world that, that what gives me hope and inspiration that I cannot rest. I need to be the voice of the voiceless. I need to march. I need to boycott. I need to fight. I need to protest. I need to organize. I need to lead. I need to activate community to making sure that by the time I'm old and gray and cannot walk, cannot fight, cannot speak anymore, that I can look back on my deathbed and I can say, you know what? I gave it my all. And that day will come, and I want to make sure that when that day comes, that my heart is full of hope and inspiration, saying that I did a good enough job for not only myself and my family, but for my community, and making sure that every injustice is combated with love and understanding.
Thank you, Diana. And so I'd like to open it up and ask each of my panelists what message they would like to offer both our siblings who are living with HIV and our trans and gender non-conforming siblings who aren't living with HIV. But before I do that, I just want to remind that next week we are taking a break from the community virtual gatherings, and that we are coming back in June or Pride Month. And with that, we can start with Achim.
The message that I have is to just keep on living. Whether you have HIV or not, just live. We only have one life to live, and you only live once, and you're not coming back. So I just say live. But while you live for yourself. Make sure that you safeguard yourself and everything that you do. Always put yourself first. Besides your higher power, mine is God. So I put God first before I do anything. But at the same time, I always think of myself when I'm doing things, and then looking out for others. And be careful out there. Do what you have to do to protect yourself, whether you are positive or not, and just live your life the way you are meant to live your life. And remember that your life is more and greater than you, and that your life has purpose and meaning.
Thank you so much, Achim. Tori, what final message would you like to give us?
So my final message is just to go for it. Whatever it is, go for it. I tend to stay away from words like could, should, and would, because in my opinion, they're very, very passive words. But for people who are diagnosed with HIV should be enough to encourage you to go after every dream and to get it. If your dream is to have a master's degree, then go and get it. If your dream is to own a home, then go and get it. If your dream is to fly to the moon, then go and get it. Do not allow COVID Do not allow HIV or any other STD or any other person to stop you from your dreams. Only you can stop you.
Thank you, Tori. Diana.
Hi, everyone. My final message to all my brothers and sisters and siblings out there in the world is to love yourself. If no one's told you today that they love you, let me be the first one to say that I love you, that I care for you. Pick up the phone, reach out, stay connected. If you're struggling with mental health, emotional well-being, call your friends, call your nonprofit organization or agency and ask for help. Practice self-care, stay connected and do the daily routines. Sometimes it's hard for me to get out of bed, wash my hair, put on my makeup, put on something nice to wear, but it's a struggle at times for me. And I have these roller coaster of emotions for the past two months because I've seen many great friends of mine pass away due to COVID. I've had a couple of family members pass away due to COVID. And so it hasn't been easy. But I think what I've learned in this last 2 months is that to never take anything for granted. Reach out to those relationships in your family or in your friends that you've lost touch with. Re-engage in those relationships. Draw meaning out of those. Do something that has always made you smile or laugh. Read a book, watch your favorite movie on Netflix, paint your toenails, cut your hair, garden, walk around, but try to be, as active as you can, practice self-care, love on yourself, love on others, and wish you all the very best. And my prayers and thoughts will always be with you. Thank you.
I would just like to thank you all for being a great audience and just wish you a great weekend and hopefully safe times ahead. Bye, everyone.
Bye.